Ah, yes, one of my patented throw a faction into the Warhammer universe, whether it be 40k or fantasy, and see if it sticks. So yes, you read that title right. What if the Fire Nation existed in Warhammer: The Old World? Although we're technically going to call it Warhammer, it's going to be Warhammer Fantasy, but tomato, tomato. Anyway, so yeah, what would it be like if the Fire Nation from Avatar: The Last Airbender would end, like, if you just put the whole fucking army, the whole Fire Nation in the Warhammer: The Old World? What would it be like? What would kind of shenanigans would ensue? And could the Fire Nation survive? And that's probably what I'll probably call it, is like, could the Fire Nation survive? Like, could the Fire Nation survive in Warhammer: The Old World? So we're going to talk about that, and also like, do they have the ability to fight and stand up against these other factions? Now, the big thing is that let's say we put the Fire Nation, we took it out of the Four Nations and dropped it smack dab, the entire Fire Nation island, smack dab in like the middle of the ocean. Well, the thing is that if you're separated by ocean, it takes a while for your enemies to get to you. But it also takes a lot to get to, it does take a lot to get to your, targets. And you do have supply lines. Though keep in mind, the Fire Nation did carve out, size comparison-wise, over the 100-Year War, they did carve out a massive foothold in the Earth Empire. Now, granted, when you look back on it, it's probably because why they held out, why they were so successful in the war for the Earth Empire. I mean, the Earth Kingdom. I kept saying Earth Empire, I'm sorry. The Earth Kingdom, and why they were so successful in gaining so much ground, was because the Earth Kingdom was probably run so shittily for, I'd say a couple decades. It's probably why, they got so good. But you can't discredit all of that just on poor politics, although that probably had a big hand in it. What really also helped was that the Fire Nation were, despite Ozai being absolutely an asshole and fascist, dude knew how to run an army. He had the generals of the Fire Nation during the 100 Years' War were said to be some of the best military tactician greatest military minds. I tried to form a sentence there, that fell apart. The greatest military minds in the Four Nations. So Ozai did a smart thing, which is he would just listen to his military council and then be like, alright, go off and do your shit. That's fine, go. With just some pointers here and there. That's what I think also made the Fire Nation such a successful force as it did, because unlike most fascist empires, where the leader has to make all the calls, that if you ever wanted to know why the German army kind of got pretty unsuccessful towards the end of the war, was probably because the Austrian painter started making all the decisions. But Ozai is different. Yeah, Ozai's a total monster, but he also knows when not to get in the way of genius. If you're winning, don't trip over yourself. Although I will admit he kind of tripped over himself with the whole Sozin's Comet and wanting to, mass genocide the entire Earth Kingdom. Almost said Earth Empire again, damn it. So, and there was some insanity towards the end. But aside from that, if we're talking like Prime Ozai, there's no Iroh here, there's no Zuko here, there's no Avatar here. Yeah, the Fire Nation does have quite the formidable army. They have, this thing called Firebending. I don't know if you know this, but they literally draw power from the sun itself, that thing that hangs in the sky, and use it on their enemies. Not only that, the Fire Nation themselves are pretty industrious. Not on the level of some of the, Navy, I would say, maybe not on the level of, the dwarves or the Empire of Man, but they're pretty good. They got some, they have tanks, they have dirigibles, they don't have, gyrocopters or anything like the dwarves do, but they still have they are capable of low-level air travel, and they have military tanks. They are capable of using tanks that can climb up a fucking mountain. That can just scale up a mountain. And not only that, like I said, your basic Fire Nation soldier is capable of, whether they're not benders, they have spears, they have swords, they have tough armor that can take a lot of punishment, But again, Fire Nation, there is such a thing as, like, it's kind of hard to fight an opponent when he's throwing fireballs at your face. So, while the Empire of Man has, like, has rifles, the Fire Nation's got something that doesn't need to be reloaded. Like, Firebending doesn't need to be like, oh, hang on, I need to, like, collect energy from the sun real fast, I'll get to you in, like, 10 minutes. It's not like that. Firebending is instantaneous, and the stronger Firebenders could probably cause, like, a big... If you threw, like, one of these greater Firebenders, these guys could just throw flames and just scorch an entire army. The other thing is, too, they could just light a forest on fire and just drive the enemy army into, like, confusion and chaos, and then just come charging in. Now, the thing is, like I said, if you put the Fire Nation smack dab in the middle of the ocean, you have now your opponents are gonna have to take a while to get to you. Same time, you have to get at them. And it isn't like the Earth Kingdom where it's the other nations are ruled by ineffectual kings and queens. No, I would say that, like, 9 times out of 10, the vast majority of the other kingdoms of the old world are pretty goddamn competent. Even if some of them are pretty tyrannical as well, they're pretty smart when it comes to war. So, if Ozai and the rest of the Fire Nation just started, like, marching into their nation, they're like, who the fuck do you think you are? That's going to be the general consensus. Now, their ingenuity, like I said, ingenuity-wise, I think they while they're not on the level of the Empire of Man or the Dwarves, they do have some pretty usable tech. Their firebending, their armies, their entire nation is bred for war. Like, the Fire Nation during the 100 Years' War, that was a nation built for fighting and combat. The island was goddamn near impossible to conquer unless you had the Day of Black Sun on your side, like a fucking eclipse. And even then, it was only 8 minutes. But you're not fighting, you see, a ragtag group of people run by hope, or an empire that's, like, ineffectual kings and little city-states, or, a water tribe that does hold its own pretty well, You're fighting empires that have lasted since time immemorial. You have got to battle them, you have got to battle dwarves, who really have this big book, that they write names down in for the big book of, you pissed me off and I'm gonna remember your name. Yes, I know it has a different name, but that's what we're going with. You have the elves, who are immortal and pretty goddamn good at magic. You have a bunch of coke addict rat men, a clan of lizard men who could easily eat you. Who else do we have? Oh, we have chaos. We'll get to them in a bit. We have undead armies, both vampire and mummy. Oh, and we have Viking warriors on top of giant mammoths. And we also have an army of drunken soldiers riding polar bears, and can shoot ice blasts at you. I really do think that, like, the Fire Nation is going to be fighting a new war every time. You see, the Fire Nation really did not. Let's actually talk about magic real quick before we talk about, like, chaos and the other factions. You see, the Fire Nation, it's kind of said in a lot of the outside sources, and I don't know, and I cannot attest for the canonicity of those stories, but what I can say is that it's kind of clear that the Fire Nation does not give a single shit about, like, the old ways or magic or spiritualism. They really just kind of care about the Fire Nation way. So they are not going to be interested in magic. I don't even see, like, the Fire Sages would be like, no, this is they would almost see it as, like, heretical, this magic, which is going to put them at odds, because it's going to be hard to fight an opponent when they try to invade Ulthuan, and, some of their men suddenly turn into fucking trees. That's going to be a problem. Or, I don't know, when you try to invade Bretonia, and this, wave of magic energy comes flying at you. There, I said something nice about Bretonia. There you go. There's that. And also, I don't know how the basic Fire Nation soldier is going to handle a giant abomination made of hundreds of bodies of screaming rat people descending upon them. It's going to affect your psyche a lot. Now, the other thing is, could the Fire Nation be affected by chaos? Oh, yeah, for sure. There is no way once the Fire Nation discovers chaos, like what chaos is, I don't see it. Like Ozai is a big enough fucking idiot to be like, oh, we can control this. We can harness the power of chaos and, bend it to our will. Yeah, no, that's not happening. That's not happening. Chaos, you don't bend chaos to your will. Chaos bends you to its will. And for what chaos gods would probably take the advantage of them, I'd say Khorne, but I do see, like, Azula probably falling to Slaanesh. Or, Azula, and I said this before in another video a while back, where I said, I think the Skaven would probably see Azula as enough of one of their own to call her, be the only non-Skaven to be considered Skaven enough for the Skaven. So they could be like, you are a good Skaven, yes, yes. And she's like, I am a good Skaven, yes. So there's that. So yeah, they're once they try to figure out what chaos is, the Fire Nation is just going to fall to that. I do see instead of becoming the Phoenix King, Ozai becomes the Demon Prince. There's that. So while I do see that the Fire Nation could actually get a good solid hold, it depends on where they land. It really kind of depends on where they go first, because if they go to Hekara, they got to deal with the Tomb Kings, and trust me, fighting in the middle, you're an army that has to march through the hot sand and sun to fight a bunch of mummies who don't need to eat, drink, rest or anything. That's a bad time. If you go to, the other direction, you gotta fight Vikings with giant mammoths, and also probably get your first experience with chaos. If you go south of that, you fight the lizard men. But if you go to not Europe, I would say they might have the best chance against Bretonnia. I think they the Fire Nation could actually hold their own against Bretonnia, given wizards excluded. So I think the Bretonian Bretonnia could have a problem. It's when they march into the Empire of Man or Sylvania is where they're going to start running into problems. At least that's where I see it, is that they're just going to, the moment the Fire Nation starts marching into Sylvania or somewhere else, or somewhere in the Empire of Man, they're going to be running into probably Manfred von Karstein, who Azula would be like, I like how this guy works. And I would not put it past Azula to be like, an eternal ruler, make me a vampire. I could totally, if she's not rolling with the Skaven, she's rolling with Manfred von Karstein. Though there's no doubt about it. Oh, and did I forget to mention the orcs? I'm sorry, I forgot to mention the orcs. The orcs are going to be also horribly a really bad time for the Fire Nation. These big, giant, green-skinned behemoths who are just going to come charging down, going, WOG! And probably killing people in the most horrendous way fashion. That's going to fuck up your soldiers' morale. But at the same time, the Fire Nation is known for, military control and having, again, the first thing a infantry unit, whether it be orc or human or whatever, they're going to be running into a wave of flames. Yeah. But God help them when they march in the Empire of Man, and there's Karl Franz waiting there with, sitting on his griffin with Gallimaraz just swinging oh, this hammer's gonna go right up your ass. You're about to get Gallimarized. That was bad. I'm sorry. Anyway, so I do see that the Fire Nation could actually be pretty, they have enough ingenuity, and I do think that they would probably, now that I think more about it, I do see that they could probably steal the technology from the dwarves and add it to their own. The Fire Nation's not above stealing your shit and putting it to themselves. So they could look at the Empire of Man and dwarves' technology and be like, oh, we can do this. Yeah. But At the same time, they are not. The Fire Nation is not prepared for the Skaven, the orcs, the fucking Tomb Kings. There's a lot that it's like a big fish. It's like a big fish from a little pond being thrown into a bigger pond, the ocean, essentially. So I do think that the Fire Nation would actually hold their own pretty well. It just depends on don't be a fuckwit with chaos. But that kind of goes without saying for everybody. Anyway, so you guys tell me in the comments below, what do you think it would be like if the Fire Nation... Could the Fire Nation survive in Warhammer the Old World? Just comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse. Real quick, I know I ended the video, but there was something earlier I completely forgot to talk about that kind of gives the Fire Nation another edge in this, like, if you put them in the Old World. The Navy. Like I said, like like a lot of the naval forces in the world of Warhammer, while they do have some steam powered, and a lot of them are, you know, your basic, you know, Renaissance era ships, the Fire Nation kind of jumps ahead with these faster, stronger, more durable, and a lot, like I said, more built, well equipped naval ships. The Fire Nation Navy is, you know, undoubtedly another reason why they kind of had an edge over other empires outside. I mean, yes, they did kind of run aground with the trying to fight the water tribe, but that's because they're fighting on the thing the people can bend. So it's kind of hard to do that. The Earth Kingdom, it was different. They outclassed the Earth Kingdom military because they were more technologically advanced, and that navy helped. So when you have a steam-powered navy that can, like, lob fireballs off your bow, you kind of have an edge over other races as well. If you have, you know, if anything, the British Empire taught us is that if you can control the seas, you can control the world. So I do think that the Fire Nation Navy does give them an extra edge over others because they can just reach other you know, continents a lot faster and probably take out a lot more ships in harbor cities a lot faster and invade them quicker. So there's that. I completely forgot to mention that earlier in the video, but yeah, I wanted to add that as like a little quick addendum. So for real this time, what do you think it would be like if the Fire Nation could the Fire Nation survive in Warhammer the Old World? Just comment below, let me know. Other than that, hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in the Multiverse.